what's going on, everybody? Sorry about that. Was sending a text message. How you guys doing? What time is it? 8 o'clock on, was it Wednesday? I think it's Wednesday. So I want to give you a brief little update. A couple of things. One, Ryan's getting a lot of messages about the October 1st registration thing. There's no clear-cut answer to that today. You can ask a million lawyers, you're going to get a millions. They don't know because it's brand new. So it's October 10th. And so, you don't need to know an answer to that today. And there isn't one. There may not be an answer a week from now or a month from now about that registry. So, you can send Ryan those messages and he'll respond back as that's not an answer that can be given at this point in time. So just going to have to hold on with that. Okay. As far as our motion to reconsider that we filed, the governor's office has to file their response to our motion to reconsider Monday, the 16th. And so after they file that motion to reconsider, we've got a couple of weeks to file a reply. And so sometime in November, we'll have a hearing on our motion to reconsider. Okay. And then we'll go from there. That's where it's at right now. So, there's no clear answer to any of it. That's typically what you get in a courtroom. Since the Calkins matter gave us that setback, we're going one step at a time. So our motion to reconsider will be heard in November, and I'll have the governor's response to our motion on Monday. I'll forward it out to everybody, and then we'll see what kind of reply we want to put together. Okay. So that's kind of where the gun case is at. And as far as the registry, it's October 11th. It's been there for 10 days. And, it says that people are supposed to register their weapons. I can't say, people are saying, well, should I register my weapons or not register my weapons? Tom, they ask me that. I get that question all the time. And I'm like, I can answer that question. I'm telling you that the rule and the law says you're supposed to register them. And that's what that says. And so I'm not going to advise you to do anything. That's what the law says. Okay. And if we can get that changed between now and the end of the year, then we'll talk about that. But as of right now, that's what it is. All right. And see if there's any questions here before I move on to other stuff. Again, people are going to throw all those kind of questions. Well, isn't the registry a Fourth Amendment violation? You could argue that, but until a federal court says that it is, it's just anybody's opinion like everybody else. So, I understand the argument of whether that's an invasion or not. It's a fair argument. It could be, Fifth Amendment even. So, but that's all to be determined. Let me see here. I don't think there's much more. Really, like I said, there's not a lot, people just commenting about registry and stuff like that. So, there was a couple of comments in there about, I can tell people typically are looking for answers faster than those answers will come in a court proceeding. So I understand that's human nature, but it's not going to be resolved anytime soon. I can tell you that right now. You know what I'm saying? I mean, any quick resolution that we could have hoped to have had in this case got screwed over when Calkins ran to the Supreme Court. I mean, practically speaking, that set our process backwards significant amount. That's just the reality of it. And I've commented on that, and all I can comment. It doesn't do any good for me anymore to critique that those events, because I've said my piece, and we'll just try to deal with it the best we can. But we could have been in a much different position in our state, much different position than we find ourselves right now if that irresponsible action wouldn't have been taken. So that's that. As far as the federal case that's still waiting for the Seventh Circuit to deal with, and eventually I think the Illinois or the United States Supreme Court is going to have to deal with these blanket bans on, again, we're using assault weapons terminology. Don't start beating me up in the comments. I know the difference. But the United States Supreme Court is going to have to deal with this, and I think they will at some point. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight like a lot of us would like it to, okay? Hold on a second. Oh, that's actually a real question. What was the recent agreed order that was entered in our case? The agreed order we entered was just merely for timing purposes of when to file. It's called a briefing schedule. I think Chris asked that question. It's a good question, Chris. It's a briefing schedule. So we filed our motion to reconsider that you guys knew about. And it merely was a scheduling order from the judge that says, okay, the government has until this day to file a response, and then we have until this day to file a reply, and then it will be set for hearing at a later date. So good question, Chris. It was merely a scheduling order is all that it was, okay? And again, people are asking all kinds of questions. I'm not going to answer your question. You're asking questions about 100% unknown. Well, what if I don't have my weapons in the state of Illinois? What if I do this? What if I do that? There's no answers to those questions. This law is not, how old is it now? Year and some change, whatever the hell it is. There's no cases that have been argued in this matter whatsoever. So there's not a lawyer worth his salt that's going to answer those questions saying you can do this or you shouldn't do this or you can't do that, because there is no answer to those, you guys. There's just not any whatsoever. So that's not an attorney deflecting from you. That's an attorney being honest with you, going, I don't know, because ultimately the courts have to flush all of those kinds of questions out, because the law doesn't answer those questions in any fashion. Okay. Jason asked another fair question. Will the court shooting down the California high capacity magazine help? I mean, it's certainly an interpretation of the Bruin standard that I think is favorable to gun owners, certainly. So, ultimately, is it going to help in our state? Probably not. It's just not going to be the case here. But could it be an interpretation of Bruin in the federal system that eventually is found to be the interpretation of the United States Supreme Court? I mean, that's the hope, right? That the United States Supreme Court eventually takes this issue up and they follow that same logic that was followed by the court out west. So certainly that's what you're looking for. But so when somebody says, will it help? Again, it's not going to help us in Illinois, because Illinois courts don't have, it's not binding on Illinois courts in any fashion. It's not binding on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals here for the federal appellate court system in our state. So it's not binding on them, but it's certainly an analysis that's favorable to our way of thinking. Okay. Yeah, Chris, if you want a copy of the scheduling order that was filed on September 29th, by all means, Ryan, send Lewis a copy of the scheduling order tonight. Chris, as I've said, it's merely this date they have to file something, and on this date we have to file something. It's not substantive whatsoever. It's purely a scheduling order. But if you want a copy of it, by all means, Ryan, send him a copy of it. Let me see here. Well, that's Chad makes a good segue that we can, again, there's nothing more to add on our gun case right now. But Chad's like, stop voting Democrat. It's kind of funny, Chad. I'm glad you put that segue in, because that's what I'm doing to Friday, and I've done the last couple of months, and I'm continuing to do. I've got a meeting tomorrow afternoon, and the resolution to all of these issues that ail us are having a legislature that doesn't think like we think. And how do you change that? The only way to change that is to do two things: elect different people across the state that think differently, or move to a different state. You got two choices, right? Or just, I guess the third choice is we sit around bitch about it, like is far too common. It's always a choice, I guess, too. It's not very effective. But if you don't want to move to a different state and you want to live in Illinois, then you got to figure out how to change the landscape of Illinois politics. And how does that happen? You elect people to the state legislature that will vote differently than the ones that voted in the Assault Weapons Act. It's really simple. And how do you win those elections? You get more votes than they get. You know, for example, I'll just give the 40th Senate district up north for the state of Illinois. It's held by a Democrat. It's possible that it could be won by Republicans. But you know what? We as Republicans got to do work in order to become more competitive in that race. Now, if you live down here where I live, you don't live in the 40th. But you know what? How that senator in the 40th vote sure as hell affects you down here where we live, doesn't it? So maybe you might want to consider thinking about what you can do to help with some of those races in our Illinois legislature that are close enough that we as Republicans might be able to win if we do something other than sit around bitch all the time. Okay. So that's what I wanted to mention to you guys is that's ultimately where a lot of this stuff has to flush out. It has to flush out to, getting involved in that process. The courts, I say this all the time when I talk across the state, the courts ultimately long term are not going to save people. They're not. No branch of government ultimately is going to save people. Even you say the legislature, well, it is the people, right? It's the people that participate, right? That's who carries the day in the legislature, the people that participate, not the people that sit on idle and complain that it's not going their way. They don't often get represented on a grand scheme in the legislature because it's the people that are involved in the process. Democrats are doing a lot better job in Illinois. And then you can all say, oh, but they're cheating in Cook County and it's all Cook County. You know what? Keep sitting at home in your rocking chair and saying that crap. And you just go ahead and then nothing will change, right? There are ways for Republicans in Illinois to start changing the landscape. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of energy, a lot of time, and it's going to take money. And that's a conversation for a different day. It's not a conversation for tonight. But ultimately, it takes people, right? Because if you can have all the money in the world, if you don't have the people, you can't get shit done. Ask Richard Irvin how that works, right? You have all the money in the world, you still get your ass kicked because you don't have people. But even the people ultimately sometimes have to have money in order to accomplish their tasks. So it's a combination of everything. That's why I'm spending a lot of time within the Republican Party, and I don't just say the establishment. Many of you in the grassroots would call the rhinos. These terms of endearment they're nauseating, to be honest with you, because it's holding us back from being able to win. I wish all I had to do was fight with the Democrats. I'll fight with Pritzker and Kwame Raoul and Christopher Welch and all of those. I fight with them all day long, but I'm spending most of my time fighting within our own damn party about trying to get the grassroots people we can start moving, because that's where I'm at. I'm going to always live in the grassroots, but I'm not naive enough to think if we don't work with the establishment that we're going to win a damn thing, because we're not. We got to be able to work together. And then I go to the establishment side and they want to talk about the grassroots people. And, I get sick of that shit all the time. And it's like, can we just quit fighting with each other about this stuff? Figure out how to win elections. And then we can worry about our differences of opinion, right? So, I have a low tolerance even on social media right now, listening to that crap in our state, the rhinos this and the grassroots MAGA lovers that. And I'm just like, I get impatient. I'm like, just shut the hell up. And I don't mean to be offensive, but it's counterproductive, you guys. And so I'm asking you, if you can, to put that aside, right? And I say this too. President Trump's going to win the primary for presidential in Illinois. He's going to win. We all know he's going to win, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. And guess what? Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, whoever the hell the Democrat is going to win the general election in Illinois for a presidential candidate. There is nothing we as Republicans can do to stop that in 2024. So I'm asking you, in light of that, to consider spending more time working on local issues in Illinois, whether it's your county, your city, maybe the state houses, on things that we can actually impact and influence, okay? Because I guarantee you, Governor Pritzker and the Illinois legislature and your local county and city officials had a hell of a lot more of an impact on your life the last 3 years than President Biden did. I guarantee it. And so you ought to consider those races a little bit more, because that's what I'm working on, okay? And so Ryan's given it to you before. the contact information that we have. We're going to get started here in the next month or so on some of these state house races that we might be able to have a chance to win. And I don't care if you live in the north, you live in the center part of the state, you live wherever you live, if you have the ability to help with some of these races on some of the efforts we're going to try to put in place, please help us, because we don't have Governor Pritzker going to write us a check for $150 million so we can go out and pay everybody to do all this stuff. We don't have that. Republicans in Illinois are poor, literally and figuratively. We're poor. And so we're going to have to do it ourselves. And if you care enough about your state that you want to help, that's great. If you want to just sit around and complain on social media because you don't like it, well, again, I can't stop that. Go ahead. It's not going to help us at all. So that's where we're at. I'm going to look and see if we got a few more questions, and then I've got to get back to work. New Vision. There you go. There's a good question. Is there a way to find out registered Republicans if they don't vote, go knock on their door? Well, they're not registered Republicans actually, but there are, Republicans that vote in the primary. We know who they are, and we know, we don't know whether necessarily they voted in a general. We know if they voted in a primary, but there's ways for us to kind of figure that out a little bit. And increasing voter turnout is one of the things that we're going to work on. So yeah, there's ways to work on that. And that's one of the things we're actually working on, because, if Republicans don't vote, then we're not going to win. Ken Bryant, can I do both? I like bitching on social media. Brother, knock yourself out. You want to bitch on social media? It makes you feel good. I mean, go for it. I'm just saying, maybe you add on top of that going, what can I do to actually help get votes? Because if everybody that likes to bitch on social media helped us get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 more votes, we'd win elections in this state and we wouldn't be so damn blue. Let me see here. I would be down to help with the cause if we can organize. New Vision said. That's what I've been working on since last November when the election ended. I was like, if we want to win as Republicans in Illinois, I know what we got to do. I don't know if we can get it done, but I know what we got to do, right? And the only way we get it done is with people. We don't get it done with the Illinois GOP. The state party is not going to accomplish what needs to get done for us to win elections in Illinois. That's not me being disrespectful to the people that sit in those positions. That's just me telling you the truth. And anybody with any political in Illinois knows that the Illinois State Party is not going to get it done. It's going to be left in the hands of people, the grassroots, everyday mom and dads. We're the ones going to have to get it done. If you want to help, I think that'd be great. Somebody just says, how can we get involved? Ryan, put the link out there where people can sign up, and we'll be in touch, I assure you. No, Andy, that court ruling in Washington doesn't have a direct impact on ours. It's good, a good analysis one way or the other, but again, it's not binding on the Illinois court and federal courts. Somebody points out the precinct committeeman. I'll speak to that. Yeah, we have it goes to the general nature of the apathy in politics in general. A lot of your precinct, there are people listening here that may not even know what a precinct committeeman is, and that's okay. But a lot of the seats for precinct committeemen are left open. There's nobody in those seats. But I would take it a step further. Even if people get in those seats and they don't do anything, what's that mean? Oh, I'm a precinct committeeman. Great. Okay, what the hell did you do? As far as being on a precinct committeeman, you go to a meeting every now and again and sit there and listen to everybody bitch. I'm joking with you guys a little bit, but you know what I mean. Being a precinct committeeman is a good thing to do, and I encourage you. But once you get there, you got to actually do something too. Phil Nagel for the 40th. Ed, why did you know I brought up the 40th just to say that with my buddy Phil? It's coincidence, you think? Seventh Circuit on the gun issue, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, they can take as long as they want to take. Somebody asked something about the Biden kids' charges. I don't follow that crap. You know, again, I'm not going to distract myself from the world of Illinois, because the people of Illinois and winning in Illinois is what I'm focused on. What's going on with Hunter Biden's charges out there, guys? Maybe that interests you. And it's, you know, if it comes across my screen, would I read it? Yeah, but I don't track that crap. I don't care. It doesn't affect Illinoisans tomorrow or next week or next month. And the damn registry for gun weapons, it really affects the people in Illinois that I care about. Hunter Biden's crap doesn't have anything to do with that. That kind of stuff, guys, again, it just distracts. And from my perspective, and you can think what you want. I mean, you're all grown adults. You can let your mind and your energy be consumed in any way that you feel is best for you. That kind of stuff doesn't work for me, because, again, it doesn't impact directly the people that I care about. I think that's about it, guys. Well, where's that? Somebody said something about a PAC or a not-for-profit. Where'd that go? Somebody said something about a PAC or not-for-profit. I wanted to answer that question. Shit. I missed it. Brian, did you see where that went? Somebody said something about a PAC or not-for-profit. I don't know if that had something to do with winning elections, etc. But, you know, that's one of the things that we've talked about, is how do we finance at any small level the issues? And one of the things that I've said, you know, there's people with money that will, Ken Bryant said it. Can't put that back up there. What the hell did you say? But there are people with money that will help support what's going on in Illinois. But you know what? They're not going to give us any money until we can at least show them that we'll do something, right? I mean, think about Mr. Uline and Mr. Griffin. They threw away $100 million on the last election cycle for governor and pissed it away. $100 million. Can you imagine what we could have done in Illinois long term for our infrastructure as a party with $100 million? And Mr. Griffin and Mr. Uline, with all due respect to those men, blew $100 million on a governor's race that they didn't have a chance in hell of winning, even if their preferred candidate got through. And that's not me criticizing Richard Irvin or Darren Bailey whatsoever. It had nothing to do with those men. We had zero chances of winning that election as Republicans. Zero. But yet these two good men wasted $100 million on that election. So again, without those two gentlemen, are there others that would invest in Illinois politics? Maybe, and I've talked to some of them, and I know people that know them, but we got to show them that we can perform. So maybe if we win a couple of state elections this year, 1, 2, 3, it's better than before, and quit losing ground, maybe they'll invest in us. But we got to prove, you know, that it's worth it to them. That's what we have to do first, because right now, nobody's going to give any money to us or to the Illinois GOP, because they don't have any faith that we could do anything. Okay. Hope that answers your question. How about Rabine? He seemed pretty good. Gary Rabine's a nice guy. I know Gary, you know, had no chance of winning that election whatsoever. And that's not a criticism of Gary. I'm just saying, you know, we as Republicans, let me be clear. We as Republicans in Illinois, and let's talk about the governor's race. We could have the perfect candidate and we still lose, because it's becoming more and more about infrastructure and vote gathering things of that nature than it is about the candidate. I hate to say that to you. The candidate's important. Don't get me wrong. You can't have a just complete moron as a candidate. But all things considered equal, two decent candidates on either side of the coin, we're not going to win as Republicans. We don't have the infrastructure. We just don't, okay? So, yeah, Gary's a nice guy. He wouldn't have won either. I think we could have won if we would. Who said that? Kevin, you say that? Kevin Pogue. I think we could have won if we got people out to vote. That's true, brother. We have no infrastructure to get people out to vote. And mail-in voting has changed the game. It used to be before, let's go back 10, 20 years ago, before early voting and mail-in voting. The party that won was the party that scared the shit out of enough people that generally think, left, call it left or right, doesn't matter. Who did the party structure of Democrat or Republican, who did they scare the shit out of more to go vote on election day, right? This last election cycle for the Democrats, it had a lot to do with abortion, right? Got the ruling out of the United States Supreme Court that mobilized a lot of Democrats to go vote. They didn't need it necessarily because their early voting and their mail-in voting superiority carried the day anyway. But it used to be traditionally November 8th, who could get the most people to go to the ballot box? How do you scare them enough or encourage them enough with, advertisements and mailers and all that shit? That was the old game. It's still a part of the game now, but it's more of the old game. Now it is, you got all this time in the early voting and the mail-in voting. How do you get people to vote that maybe wouldn't go vote on November 8th? Get that low-hanging fruit. So you're going to ensure, Kevin, coming back to your point, that your voter turnout is always high as a party. So when you say get the Republicans out to vote, Kevin, you're exactly right. But the reality is, we can't just scare the shit out of them anymore to get them to vote on November 8th. We got to play the same game the Democrats are playing. And this is not just a conversation that I'm having in Illinois. It's a conversation going on in a lot of states across this. How do we do the same thing as Republicans? Guys like Charlie Kirk, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the same thing. How do you do that the same way, or we're going to continue to lose? So good point, Kevin. Michael Folsom asked that question, asking about the integrity of the early voting and the mail-in voting. I had that question the other day. And you know what I say, Michael? Doesn't matter what I think in the answer to the question you just asked. What I do know for certain, because I can have an opinion like you, whether I think it has integrity or not has integrity, it doesn't matter. You know what does matter? Is that if we don't do it as Republicans, if we don't do it, we're never going to win, right? We're never going to win. So for people to say, oh, it lacks integrity, I'm not going to do it, or we shouldn't do it, then we're going to relegate ourselves to being in the super minority in Illinois for the rest of our natural born lives. Does that mean we can't talk about the integrity of the system and how to make sure the signatures match and all of that crap? Yeah, certainly. But we can't use that conversation as propaganda to say we shouldn't endorse and fully participate in that process, Michael, because again, if we don't, we can't win, right? We just can't win. And I say this all the time too, Michael, and I'll say it again. Let's say we as Republicans get, because a lot of Republicans, we don't like early. It's vote on November 8th. We don't like it. Okay. Let's say we get so good as Republicans at early voting and mail-in voting that we win the elections and we take over Illinois politics as Republicans because we get better at it than the Democrats. We're going to change the law back then and go back to November 8th only voting? Hell no, we're not. We're going to keep it in place because we're using that system to now win our way. So it's all relative. I'd ask you to keep that in mind. A couple people asking, how do I think the assault weapons ban case is going to end up? I have no idea. If I could predict how that case is going to end up, Johnny Cochran would have had nothing on me. I'd be a world famous lawyer if I could predict how a case is going to end up, because cases have people in them, and I don't pretend to be able to predict how people are going to play. There's Ken's question. Any thoughts on setting up a PAC or not-for-profit to support candidates? Which organizational structure would be better for grassroots to set up? That's a good question, Ken. We can talk about that after the fact. I'm not so sure. I think it's a little premature talking about a PAC, et cetera, to support candidates. It's certainly a good conversation to have. But right now, there's some, supporting candidates requires more than the traditional concept of supporting candidates. The whole game has changed with how we might be able to win these elections. But it's a good question, Ken. We can talk about that later. I'd say the same. It's a good there, Michael. I read it again. Your issue with the voting by mail or your mail in more than early voting. Same thing with me. The mail in, we could talk about the efficacy of that and the pitfalls and the risks with the mail in, etc. Those are all valid questions. I'm just saying that we have to fully embrace the mail in voting. If I had my way, every person in the state of Illinois that's inclined to vote Republican, I'd put them on permanent mail-in voting. Because you know what that does? It's going to increase the number of votes that the Republicans get. Again, if they're an independent, but they lean Republican, I want them all on mail-in voting. And all the Democrats, I don't want any of them on it. Because again, the reality is we're going to win that way. But again, the integrity of it and the processes to make sure that there's the least amount of cheating as possible, they're all good conversations. But again, those conversations shouldn't distract from the fact that if we don't do it, we're not going to win. All right, guys, I think that's probably enough of them. Again, we're not talking about ballot harvesting, Dave. That's a separate conversation. Ballot harvesting is a different beast altogether than, early voting and not even early, but really mail-in voting. So, all right, guys, you have a good evening. Take care, and we'll be back once we have more to talk about, okay?